All right, so we can get started. Um, basically, just as Haley mentioned, I have experience working on national and local fundraising campaigns. But I'm very familiar working with nonprofits that are based on PEI, and in fact, my professional experience before starting Spruce Content was project management for community legal information. So I very much love working with PEI nonprofits, and the focus of this presentation is really how to develop holiday fundraising on PEI. My favorite holiday treat is shortbread with cocoa. All right. So, getting into the content, the first question that I'd like to ask the group, just as a way to really get into this kind of headspace of thinking about seasonal fundraising, is what comes to mind when you think of seasonal fundraising? Haley, is there anything that comes to mind for you?
Uh, I think Giving Tuesday is what
Yeah.
comes to mind when you talk about seasonal fundraising.
Mhm.
Yeah, to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's like for me actually that's probably the big one as well because this is the time of year that I start seeing so much content related to Giving Tuesday.
Yeah. We
Um
we have a comment from Lynn say what comes to mind when you think of seasonal fundraising. She said competition.
oh, that's a really good point, Lynn. Yeah, it can be when everybody is fundraising at the same time, it can be really intense for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have Dirk who said Christmas season and the ending of the Christmas Carol.
Oh, that's nice. Yes.
Yeah. And then we have Hannah from Wild Child, said Giving Tuesday. She also said Giving Tuesday and the end of year donations for tax purposes.
Oh, yes. Very true. Hi, Hannah.
And then we have Nancy Clement who said choosing to give to a charity rather than gift giving within family or group of friends or workplace.
Mhm. That's lovely. Absolutely. And that's definitely very resonant, I think, especially with both Giving Tuesday and then more traditional seasonal giving as well. Um, okay, great. Thank you, everybody. So just to do a quick overview of the contents of today's presentation, we'll start by talking about Giving Tuesday specifically, and the focus here is really kind of making Giving Tuesday more accessible and helping folks to either start their first Giving Tuesday content or to have a bit of a fresh perspective for this year. And then we'll talk about making a plan for seasonal giving. So, really getting into the strategy around that and some practicalities. Then we'll talk about stress-free implementation. So, making sure that the process for your team is really comfortable and feels aligned with your values and doesn't cause any burnout. And finally, we'll talk about how we can kind of move from competition to collaboration in the community with various organizations. Okay, so to start out with, what is Giving Tuesday? So, for a bit of background, Giving Tuesday did start in the US in 2012. And the idea with this originally was to try to balance out the consumerism of Black Friday and Cyber Monday with a day for good. So, if you have a look at the Giving Tuesday Canada website, you can see that Canada Helps and Give 3 brought the movement to Canada in 2013. So it wasn't very long before Canadian organizations started to participate in this movement. And really, the idea around Giving Tuesday is just to build some kind of like global generosity as a movement rather than to have things be a bit more fragmented. So, Giving Tuesday 2025 is on December 2nd, which is about a week from now. And as an organization, you do not need to register to participate and to kind of take advantage of that intense activity around Giving Tuesday and the energy associated and the resources that Giving Tuesday Canada has out there and some other resources that we'll discuss later. You can find templates and graphics online. So there's a ton of support and just a ton of resources that you can use for your campaign. And I think it's worth noting that if your organization doesn't want to request donations for Giving Tuesday, it's still worth considering participating in that Giving Tuesday period and using the Giving Tuesday language in order to support your neighbor organizations, your neighbors in their fundraising. And of course, you can also request other forms of participation from Giving Tuesday for your own organization. So for example, you could say, this Giving Tuesday, we're not asking for donations, but we want to recognize the wonderful contributions of our volunteers. And if you're interested in volunteering, this is how you might do that. Or you could say, this Giving Tuesday, we're not asking for donations, but we would really love to have a bit of support if you could just share some of our content or have a conversation with a community member about what we're trying to do with this organization. So there are definitely, like, even though I think a lot of the campaigns around Giving Tuesday are donation focused, there are ways that you can move outside of that if you would like. So I wanted to touch on a couple of sector trends during this presentation, and this is the first one. So I think it's definitely worth noting that Giving Tuesday is really gaining in popularity, and each year there are more contributions. So between 2018 and 2024, donations actually increased 5 times. So that is, of course, like, 5 years after Giving Tuesday in Canada started, 2013, you still have that like increase that organizations can really tap into, or again, like use as a kind of starting point for some conversations with people associated with their organizations. So if you haven't done Giving Tuesday before, or maybe you have and it's kind of really expanded beyond something streamlined, this is a basic framework to keep things kind of concise and organized. I recommend just 3 essential components. So a campaign announcement where you share your goal, and very important, just explain the impact of contributions. So where is the money going if people are donating, or what type of impact does participating in other ways have? So if people are volunteering, what's the impact of that going to look like? If people are just sharing your content, what kind of impact, like what does that mean for your organization and for your goals? So then the second part is counting down to December 3rd. And I think we've all seen these posts where organizations will put out a post and say, oh, there are only 7 days left, or there's only 2 days left. So this is a way of really encouraging people to take action now and to get involved. And I think it's really important during those posts as well to tell impact stories and also to share progress on how your campaign is going. So again, this could be like an impact story related to how some donations have helped particular parts of your community before, or it could be impact around the type of energy or momentum that your organization can have when people are having conversations around a given topic. And progress also can be, we're halfway to our goal, or it could look like saying, because of all of your involvement around Giving Tuesday, we've reached this many more people than we usually would have during this time of year, something like that. And finally, the day after Giving Tuesday, so the day after, in this case, December 2nd, it's really important to thank everyone who participated. again, focusing on the fact that they had impact and their involvement was meaningful. And then encourage ongoing participation and connection. So mention a way that outside of this context of Giving Tuesday, the momentum can keep growing and you can keep having, community engagement, or those donations will continue to support people. And this is how you can stay in the loop of what our organization does with that. So these three elements, like even if your campaign just has, 3 emails to your network, I would recommend doing the first one as a campaign announcement, the second one a countdown where you share progress, and then the third one be like a thank you message. If you have, if you have the time to post every day on Facebook between today and next Tuesday, I'd recommend also doing like one campaign announcement and then however many impact stories and progress notes that you can do, and then finally, thank you for your involvement, and this is how you can stay involved. Does anyone have any questions about this? All right. Feel free at any point to put questions or comments in the chat. Thanks, Nancy. Okay. So this is a question just for the group. Has anyone seen a Giving Tuesday campaign that you really liked? Is there anything? And feel free to share a comment in the chat if there's one that comes to mind, but you can also just think back on if there have been any that you really enjoyed. And definitely don't share if there's one that comes to mind that you didn't like, but it's also not a bad idea just to reflect on if there was anything you came across that you thought could have been done differently, or where there was an element missing. So maybe while people are thinking about this, I'm just going to share a couple that I saw that I really liked. So Special Olympics PEI, this is a post that they did December 3rd of last year, and December 3rd last year was Giving Tuesday. And I really loved this because you have like very wonderful photos from the community where people are smiling and people are really like engaged. There's kind of some action here. There's some community because you've got people standing together, and the post is very, very friendly. Like it's a celebration. And then they very clearly here in the middle, they share the impact. They say your donation will help break barriers and create a more inclusive society where everyone has the opportunity to participate in sports. Donate today to ensure a brighter, more inclusive future for all of our athletes. So this is like a very beautiful, positive, uplifting post that they made, and I think that Special Olympics PEI in general like excels in fundraising, but this was an example that really stood out to me because it really does focus on community, and it's aligned with the values of the organization. It's not too long, it's pretty concise, like it's just an excellent post. So a different style of post that I also really loved was this one from Blooming House, and I think this was also last year. And we can't see because I just embedded a screenshot in this slide, but this is actually a video where different staff and board directors contribute some comments on the impact of Blooming House. So you can see, like in this screenshot, you can see this is something that they're saying. They're talking about how support from the community allows the organization to provide the best support possible. So there's there's this real kind of positive, welcoming kind of energy to this post, which I just think is excellent. Does anyone? Oh yes, Kimberly.
Hi, I just have a quick question about I guess the people's willingness to participate and to donate. I'm wondering if you typically see more giving to charities as opposed to nonprofits that are not charities.
Mhm.
And generally, like, would nonprofits participate, and would that look different from a charity?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I think that, so I'm glad you asked this actually, because as I was looking through this report from Canada Helps, their Giving Report 2025, I didn't include a chart from there, but I did notice that they actually track uh, donations with tax receipts versus donations without tax receipts. And I think that traditionally people think that the disadvantage of nonprofits asking for donations is that people really want the tax receipt. But actually, according to Canada Helps, donations without tax receipts are on like a very steady rise in Canada. Like it's just totally going up. So I can see maybe after this call, I'll see if I can dig that up and send it around. But it's really interesting to see that because, and I don't know this for sure because the report didn't get into whether that impacts Giving Tuesday specifically. But my guess is that that probably means that it's more likely that people will be willing to give to organizations that can't give tax receipts now versus like 2013. Um, so I'm not sure if that exactly answers your question, but I would certainly, as a nonprofit, do a Giving Tuesday campaign 100%. And a lot of organizations that aren't charities do see good success from Giving Tuesday campaigns.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think there's some chat activity.
Yeah, Dirk is just wondering, is it being recorded? Do you mean the session or the
I was actually asking if you will be sharing the recording.
Oh, yes, yes, we will be posting the recording on our Facebook channel.
Okay, I was just a little late. Sorry. I
Oh
was
no,
very
No
interested in this
problem.
session.
that's totally fine.
Thank you for joining us. Okay. So, making a plan for seasonal giving, and this does definitely tie into Giving Tuesday, but we're kind of taking a step out and looking at planning for this period in general. So, typically, the seasonal giving period is considered to be the time period building up until the 31st of December. So, Christmas Eve, sorry, New Year's Eve. My goodness. And actually, a fun fact is that Giving Tuesday just recently, I'm not sure if it was 2023 or 2024, but one of those years was the first day that donations on Giving Tuesday actually exceeded donations given on the 31st of December. So before then, there was this buildup towards the last day of the year, and now there's a little bit of a change in the distribution where there's more energy at the beginning. So I think that's interesting for organizations to know as well. But it really just depends on your organization's history and like where donations are coming from, because certainly not everybody relies on seasonal giving to begin with. So, key components of making a plan for seasonal giving. It's really important to, I've mentioned this before in the context of Giving Tuesday, but it's really important, like the absolute key is to explain impact. So, key questions here are why give and also why now. So it's really important to focus any campaign on that central kind of question of why give and why now. And so the second component is to choose your channel and format carefully. So we just looked at two examples. One was Blooming House and the other was Special Olympics. And they chose slightly different formats for those specific posts that I showed. But sometimes organizations will choose like one main channel in a variety of formats, or they'll try to communicate via multiple channels if their audience is receptive to, social media and emails, or, in-person fundraising as well, like, etc. But it's important to think about your audience and how they might like to be approached. The third thing is to really make sure that your messaging is on brand. And then, of course, setting appropriate and achievable goals is also always important. So I think that if I was doing a campaign for an organization for the very first time, I might actually start with the fourth thing, where I had a look at what the context was at that particular moment, and then what those goals might be if they're just starting out. But of course, if this is your 20th year of doing some kind of fundraiser at this time of year, it's probably a bit of a later consideration. Okay, so now we're going to kind of dive in.
Question.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Oh, sorry. So just about achievable, if you go back one slide, appropriate. It's the appropriate part for me that I'm just trying to. Could you give an example of what you mean by appropriate?
Absolutely, yeah. So for example, I'll give an example of something that might not be appropriate. So if an organization is mainly focusing on providing a certain type of resource for the community, but that resource has already been very much funded by a government source, then perhaps having a goal to raise funds for that contribution might not be appropriate, because you've already got a source of funding for that. That's just one example. I'm thinking another thing that I'm talking about with an organization right now is a tricky situation where some of their audience is very much able to contribute and some aren't. So the question is is it appropriate to ask for donations after presenting a resource to a group where some might be really, really comfortable giving a donation, and for some people it might not feel very comfortable. So those are some considerations, I think, around appropriate. Does anything else come to mind for you, or?
Yeah, so for if I had a program, we do cooking classes right now, so and I'm hoping to get funding for that stream. That's not something that I want to set my goals, my fundraising goals for. So I guess I understand now what you mean by appropriate. Is and somebody's looking for an example for number 3, make sure your messaging is on brand.
Sure. So messaging that's on brand, I think a really great example is this one. So the messaging here really, really aligns with the Special Olympics PEI website. It really does, this is kind of how they share information in general. It's very kind of comfortable language. As we celebrate, it's very inclusive, because they're not saying they're not really differentiating between the organization and their community. It's very, very aligned with how the organization operates. So an example of something that might not be aligned would be if in an organization that worked with community members and it was very participatory, if suddenly they started using super, super formal language for Giving Tuesday, that wouldn't be an aligned way of communicating. It wouldn't sit well with their values. So I think for me, messaging is really about how you communicate and making sure that the brand is reflected in that communication. Okay, so jumping in a little bit deeper into impact. So impact is really about answering these questions. Who needs help? What do they need? When do they need it? Why now? Where the impact will be felt, and why it matters. So all of these are, again, you don't need to answer absolutely all of these questions in your communications, but this is a helpful list just to refer back to if you're not really sure what to say. Then it's not a bad idea to kind of consider all of these elements and then decide which part is most important to share with your audience. And you can answer, if you have like an email that you're sending to people who donated last year, you can certainly assume that they have a little bit of context and then really focus on something that's a little more detailed. So like, where will the impact be felt of this campaign? Like what's special about this moment that makes it really important to reach out, as opposed to like re-explaining the purpose of the organization. Again, it just depends like who you're talking to, how many campaigns like this you've done before, where you'll focus here. But in general, explaining impact is really, really key. Okay. So sector trends. This is really special for local organizations. Apparently, donations to community-based charities have more than tripled in 2018. So again, this is just through Canada Helps, like their platform. So it might not be an exactly precise reflection of the overall picture, but I still think because a lot of charities on PEI and a lot of nonprofits use Canada Helps, this is an important stat to keep in mind, is that, focusing on the fact that your cause is local can have a huge impact. Okay, so choosing your channel. So just a couple of notes here. This is really about where your potential supporters might be. So if you have a fantastic newsletter, like for example, I know the PEI Woodlot Owners Association has a fantastic newsletter. It has a lot of readership. People are there. If ever they were fundraising for something, probably they would use that newsletter as like a source of connection with their audience, because people are excited to be there. They're definitely choosing to be there. If an organization does a lot of events, it's probably not a bad idea to see the events as a important channel for getting the word out about fundraising. A lot of people use social media, and social media can also be fantastic. And it's just worth noting that if your social media followers are people who like clients that you're trying to support, it might be a different type of messaging that you want to put out than if your followers are like a mix of people who are community partners and clients and people who have volunteered. Like, it's worth thinking about your audience when you're crafting messages. So another couple of examples, mailouts can be great. I know that there's been a decline in this form of communication recently. So again, it's just worth thinking in the context of your own organization. Radio ads, of course, can be fantastic. And then also just, again, not forgetting that there are opportunities for in-person fundraising that can be really meaningful and sometimes more personal for an audience than just focusing on digital marketing. So on brand messaging, we touched on this a bit, but just really important to make sure that every part of your campaign is building trust and strengthening relationships. Like it's much more important for organizations to build support that can last for years rather than get a lot of money in the door right now, but kind of burn people out of their contributions or have people feel like, okay, well, I've already done my piece with this and I don't want to engage more. So I think that this is really important, especially for community-based organizations where, making a connection with somebody who may want to participate more in the organization can just have such a huge impact over a decade or two. It's really a valuable opportunity to strengthen some of those relationships. And of course, be inclusive. So I generally recommend that if an organization is putting out a call for donations, they also add like some other way that people can participate. So please donate if you can, or also share our page and talk about why people should connect with us. Or it could even be as simple as, donate if you can, or have a look at our website and see what resources we offer. Okay, and setting goals. So the real key here is just to think about what a reasonable request is from your community. So if this is your first, let's just say, for example, that we're talking about an organization that has never really done seasonal fundraising, I think probably the best place to start, if there's really like not much to build from, is to say, we're looking forward to Giving Tuesday and supporting, our partners in the community with their campaigns. Did you know that you can make a donation to our organization? This is why you might want to do that. So a goal in that case, where you're really starting from basics, a goal there could be, if you can track the number of views on your website, maybe you want like 20 people to have a look at your donate page, right? That would already be a real success because you've got more eyes on what you're doing, you've got some interest, and then you can build on that for your next campaign. Or if that's Giving Tuesday and you intend to do some more posts in December, that can be like a starting point to say, thank you so much. We've seen an increase in interest from our community, and we're going to share some more stories about why you might want to donate. So I just want to emphasize here that total number of donations isn't the only goal that's worth setting, especially if your organization is early in the process. It can feel discouraging if you don't see an increase in total donations, but having people get curious about your organization is such a major and meaningful outcome to engaging in this type of campaign. If your organization does have more donations, so perhaps you have, let's say an organization has 20 donors who give monthly. Then maybe you might want to say, all right, let's see if we can have our monthly donors reach out to some of their friends, and we can make some new connections with new donors. So that would be like a hyper-focused campaign where you're just reaching out to existing donors and asking them if they can get more involved and spread the word. So those are just a couple of examples that are a little bit more focused and specific, but could be like a really huge benefit for an organization, as opposed to doing like just a kind of very general call for donations. And it really depends, again, on the context of your organization, how likely it is that the community would respond. But if you can be a little bit more focused, you're more likely to see results. Okay, so I think that reasonable request is like a huge component here, but also the amount of time and energy that you can put into the campaign is also really key. So if your organization can put aside even 2 hours per week between now and the end of the year, that's a good kind of framework for you to say, what's a reasonable goal in the context of us just being able to set aside this limited time? Is a goal that we can set the number of people that we reach out to, as opposed to like the outcome that we're seeking. So that's also something to consider as well, is just what your resources are as the organization. Okay, so just building on that, outcome-based goals would be around like what you're looking to see in terms of donations, donors, or as I said before, like number of people that are looking at your content and that are engaged. Followers on Facebook, people signed up to your newsletter. There could be lots of different outcome-based goals. Process-based goals are around like what you are actually doing as the organization. So it can be useful to set some process-based goals if it's hard to tell what the outcome might be. So for example, you might say, all right, this is the first year that we're doing Giving Tuesday, and we want to do Giving Tuesday, maybe 5 might be a bit tricky, but let's say this is the first year we're doing fundraising around the holidays. Let's see if we can make 5 meaningful social media posts. Or another process-based goal would be, let's reach out individually to each donor that supported us in the last 3 years and just thank them and ask them if they might be willing to donate again, or if they could connect us with a few of their friends, colleagues, neighbors. Okay, so feel free to share in the chat if you would like, or it might just be a good moment to reflect on what outcome-based and progress-based goals would make sense for your organization this year, or if it's too late for your organization to be thinking about this year, maybe even starting to think about next year. So of course, after this presentation, you'll have access to the recording, so you can come back to this and think about these outcome-based and process-based goals that are listed here, and maybe how to adapt them for your organization, or something else that might feel more resonant for you. All right, this is the last section of this presentation, and we really want to focus here on stress-free implementation. So that means avoiding burnout for your colleagues and yourself. So keep it simple. Certainly just don't invest too much time and money. And the key here is too much. It's important to be aware of where that threshold is, because as mentioned before, in terms of your community, it's really important for you to make sure that you still have something to bring next year, or you still have something to bring in January, and you're not completely burning out around seasonal fundraising. And remember, you can iterate each year and build on the success of what worked this year and what didn't work. So really focusing on starting small and then building. So as a sample plan, we've already really discussed this in the context of Giving Tuesday, but for seasonal fundraising generally, here are a couple of options for digital marketing around a campaign. So for social media, you could do 1 campaign announcement, 3 stories of impact, a progress update / countdown, and then of course, like really, really important is a thank you and please connect with us. And again, like I would say, if you do nothing else for seasonal fundraising this year, I think that the thank you and please connect with us is still an important message to put out there. So that really is super foundational. Blog or newsletter, you could do 1 campaign announcement and stories of impact, and then a progress update and countdown, still really focusing on impact, and then a thank you and please connect with us. All right, sample plan for outreach. You could call or email people who gave last year, and the personal touch is really important. So I would recommend, like, unless you have 500 people to get in touch with, it's really important to send a personal email. Hello, Haley. I'm so grateful that you contributed last year. A donation of that size can help us with XYZ. If you would be open to it, we'd really appreciate you sharing the campaign this year or donating again, something like that. And of course, you can use a template, but just making sure that it's personalized and not like an email blast where everybody's CC'd and it just says dear friend or something like that. So ask volunteers, colleagues, friends, and family to like, comment, and share social media posts or forward newsletters. So this is super, super helpful in terms of reach. And I think that it's really worth doing this for any type of social media, but especially things that are time sensitive, like seasonal fundraising. And then as an organization yourself, you can comment, like, and share the posts of partner organizations. So that also will be like a really meaningful contribution that you can make. And it not only lifts up the engagement for that partner organization, but it'll also boost your own social media profile in the algorithm as well. So that type of engagement is very favored by social media algorithms. And finally, send a personalized thank you card or email to individuals that have donated. And of course, as always, just make sure to share impact there as well. So key here is just to focus on relationships. Like, how can, while we're approaching this process, how can we really focus on planting some seeds or like creating some connections that can grow later? So some of your audience may not be able to contribute now, but if it's at all possible to include them and ask them to support your cause in another way, it's really worth doing that. And it's important to remember that beyond requesting for donations or even requesting for shares or anything like that, you can use a campaign like this to just boost your cause or kind of champion your community. And that's also a real benefit of seasonal fundraising, is that everybody is kind of out there thinking about their community, right? Like it's a very, very community oriented time. So it's not a bad moment to just say, you know, this is why we're so excited to be involved in this movement. And this is why we love our organization or this cause. And I'd like to share another example. So Special Olympics, this is a very long ago post. But in 2019, this was like, you know, quite spontaneous. They thanked a corporate donor for donation in this way. And I think that, you know, it goes back to just the importance of recognizing and really the value of recognizing contributions as they happen. Because this type of post is certainly like very much encouraging of future contributions, but it's also just very community oriented. And it may even spark some interest from a different company to also support the organization. Okay, so sector trends. It's very important to recognize that this is relationship building opportunity, and certainly Canada Helps is also noticing that as well. So strengthening like monthly giving, Giving Tuesday, etc. Like strengthening that can really help organizations in the long run, because there's that energy or like that connection for the community. Okay, so after the basics, like after those initial suggestions for outreach or for digital campaigns, here are just a few extra things that can be really valuable. So sharing why I give testimonials from frequent donors, sharing moments of impact stories from board members, staff, or volunteers. And an example of that is the Blooming House video that I showed a screenshot of earlier. recruit volunteer fundraisers. So you might be able to, maybe in your network, you have a couple of people who volunteer in a different way who might be willing to lend some time and expertise and their network for this time of year to help you get the word out and to help you fundraise. So kind of like looking outside of the capacity within your organization already. And finally, if there's anything that's unique or new about your campaign, sending that to local journalists in the form of a press release is really useful. So a nice example that I think of with this is a few years ago, Family Violence Prevention Services so Rianne Beatty started baking bread and then contributing proceeds from that to Family Violence Prevention Services. And there was actually a CBC article about this because it was really special and unique, and there was some good traction that came from that as well. So something like that is unique and new, right? Because it's like a story of somebody wanting to contribute in a very special way. And this is also bonus. This is like an extra kind of piece, collaborating with community partners. So we've touched on this a little bit, but just really focusing on cross promotion, engagement establishes credibility with your audience, and as we mentioned before, algorithms. Collaboration builds a sense of collective care and community, so rather than competition. And it's really, really important to lean into that because competition does not feel good. It makes it a little bit more like work. So prioritizing, connections with partners that share your audience, connections with organizations in the same community, but then of course also your sibling organizations if you're part of a federated model. And of course, any organization that you actively collaborate with, because then you can really emphasize that connection and shared community contribution. So this is a really nice post that CSN did recently where they highlighted their connection with Peers Alliance. And I think this is a lovely example of how that can be done in a really connected and thoughtful way. Any questions or concerns?
Thank you very much for that presentation. That was great, what I was able to see. I do have a question. It is about like social media. It's such a challenge to get traction, and even less now, just because of the algorithms, the AI, all that stuff, just crowding people's spaces. Are there other strategies that you can think of top of mind? We don't, because you mentioned like not spamming people. So how do you get your message out through your socials when it's just not being seen?
Absolutely. This is a great question. And so just a couple of thoughts on that. The first thing that comes to mind, like within the context of social media, like in social media, is video content performs better in the algorithms these days than any form of static content. So if it's at all possible to do a little video or to just I think the Blooming House video is actually a great example where it's a little bit casual. It's certainly shot on a phone camera for sure. It's the editing can be done in Canva. It's really, really helpful to have video content in terms of trying to tap into the algorithm. The other part is if you can post something on social media and then instantly have 5 or 6 other accounts interact with it. So if you can post something and then a community partner like it or share it, and then a couple board directors comment, and then maybe 3 staff members like it, that is already like such a fantastic start in terms of engaging with the algorithm. And the last thing I'll say is it really, really is a challenge, especially for smaller community-based organizations these days. So I would really recommend trying to pair any social media work with something that is not on social media. So if it's possible to do something that is by email, where it's your own content, your own context, there's a little bit more direct. That someone's going to receive an email. You don't know that they're going to see something on Facebook. It's really good to pair those things if possible.
Those are great tips. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mitchell has a question. What are your tips or thoughts around approaching potential major donors or sponsor on Giving Tuesday? And Dirk did a wonderful job of kind of put in the on-brand messaging slide that we did. But any other thought on approaching potential major donors?
Absolutely. Let me have a look at that. Yes. So for sure, reaching out in a personal way is really, really helpful. I think that's the main thing. And if you can be a little bit more focused and find potential donors that already have some kind of connection to your cause, it could be that, you notice that there's a company that is really inclusive in their marketing, and your organization focuses on social inclusion, some aspect of social inclusion or like social diversity. You can approach them and say, hey, we've noticed that your marketing is super inclusive. We really value that because our values are also connected to inclusion. So that's a way of starting that conversation where it's not just, it doesn't feel as kind of it breaks down that stranger barrier, and it kind of invites a shared connection. So that's something that I would really recommend if you're doing any cold outreach. But if it's at all possible to find somebody in the network of your organization that has maybe a personal connection to a corporation, that's also for sure going to be better as well. So that would be, to be honest, that's my main tip in terms of actually how you approach that that first conversation. I would say certainly like a phone or video call or in-person meeting is better than just sending a cold email. But you might need to send an email or a DM in order to say, look, I'd love to chat with you because of this. Would you be interested in having a conversation about how we might collaborate? Something like that. I just want to quickly show, because I'm conscious of time here, I want to quickly show there are some resources that are super, super useful for organizations so both of these are called Goal Setting for Giving Tuesday and Canva Templates for Giving Tuesday, but they can really be used for any holiday giving. So Canva has, this is just a screenshot after clicking on this link here, Canva Templates for Giving Tuesday. You can see that Canva has a lot of really well-designed graphics that can be used in digital communications. They have like email templates, they have press release templates, they have certainly tons of social media post templates. So if you were tailoring one of these, you could easily take the Giving Tuesday graphic out if you're just doing a post about seasonal giving generally. You can replace the photos, you can add your own details, but this is a really great place to start if you are not like, a graphic designer who is doing tons and tons of digital graphic design in the first place. Like it's a more accessible place to start. So I would really recommend after this call, checking out these two resources, which can be really helpful for goal setting and then also just getting some of those graphics up and going.
That's amazing. Yeah. Does anybody have any other question before we go? I'm just being mindful of time.
Thank you,
Cool.
everyone, for joining us. I really appreciate it. And please feel free to follow up afterwards if there are any other questions at all.
Yeah, I put our contact information in the chat, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Yeah, we really appreciate Emma for coming today, and we have a great time collaborating on the shared services program. And Emma's been helping, I think, 8 of our organizations on their fundraising efforts. So yeah, really appreciate that. All right.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.